Hello, I want to make a video about uh, racial interbreeding. Okay, I want you to suppose that there are two racial groups. We'll call them the black one and the white one. The black race and the white race. Okay, so I want you to suppose that in each group there are 10 people. I want you to further suppose that in each group has 100 genes. Okay, so obviously not all their genes are in common. That's why they're different, but they share some genes. But you know what I mean. Okay, so now suppose that these two groups meet. You will find probably that as is always the case, some get on with the members of the other group better than others do. It's always the case. Just look within families. There's always someone you can get on, or usually, most of the time, there's someone you get on with better than someone else. So that's just life. There may even be someone you hate. That's just the way it is. Right, okay. So also you just have natural preferences anyway in life. You might prefer tea, you might prefer coffee, that kind of thing. So let us suppose that some members of the black race just happen to prefer their own kind, which they do anyway because they go to live together in enclaves, essentially. And so do white people. People just do choose their own kind naturally. So that's what happens. But yeah, I'd say there are some members of the white race who just happen to prefer white people, as also happens, as said. Yeah, so it's just okay. But some members of each group will be happy to interbreed. Now, the thing is that when you breed dogs, you always get a dog. And when you breed cats, you always get a cat. What this means is that cat genes make cats and dog genes make dogs. Now, taking the cat genes, for example, you might breed two black cats and find that you get one with ginger stripes. Okay? Or you might breed a black and white cat with a ginger striped cat and get a black kitten. So all kinds of genes are mixed up together in the same species or group. And they just come out at random over the generations. Okay, so this is the same with humans. Now, if you interbreed, what you're going to find is that all these different genes from each group result randomly in within the offspring. So just as someone who is happy to interbreed may well have contained genes, probably contained some genes from a person who didn't want to interbreed. So those genes will be passed into a mixed race child. So you may have a child that is very unhappy to be what they are. They may have an instinctive preference to be a particular kind of person, and may find that they are never able to achieve this, which may be a strong desire in them throughout their lives. So if you so that would be a cause of a lot of unhappiness for some people. For example, Michael Jackson, he was born with a fairly dark skin, looking quite negroid, not as dark as some can get, but some are, but quite negroid. And he spent decades, wasn't it, from about, what was it, 25 to 45, trying to look white. And it wasn't just a skin disease, as has been claimed, because very obviously he had plastic surgery, and that was to look white. Okay, and his children are white, so he obviously isn't their real father. So he was basically trying to be white. So even though he was quite dark and quite negroid looking by nature, something in him wanted to be white. I think some ancestor of his um, just put some genes into. Well, there was obviously some race mixing in the past, which involved genes that wanted to remain white, and he ended up with them, even though he looked very black. So he was obviously unhappy because he spent an awful lot of time and effort making the most extreme attempts to be something that, for the most part, he wasn't. Which is very sad and caused a lot of sadness, obviously. Um, Also, over time, those who don't race mix will just naturally produce children who are happy to. So, and they will presumably race mix, or some of them will. And so, over time, you will find that the pool of people, the population of people who do not want to race mix, will just naturally reduce. Because their numbers, will, well, because their children who did want to, who were happy to race mix, will have carried their genes over time into mixed race populations. So you will end up with no pure race of people and a whole lot of mixed race people. Now, some people will be happy with that, and some people will not. You will have a lot of unhappy people who will be suffering for those who were happy to do what they did. But should you do something that affects other people, that affects them adversely, just to please yourself, it's like robbing a bank in a way. It might please you, but a lot of other people don't like it. Their money gets stolen. It's like burgling someone's house. It might please you, but it doesn't please the person who's burgled. In a way, over time, it will be genetically, at least, there will be more genetics make people. So it will be the rape of hundreds of millions of people. Really, hundreds of millions of people. It'll be just fine for hundreds of millions of others, but it'll be cause a lot of suffering to people who are not happy with that, who are not happy to be mixed race, who want to be either black or white or whatever. So what can we do about this? Well, we could try and look at the cause of it. Maybe it could be due to distant ancestry, causing you to seek out what you find attractive, which is another race. For example, Michael Jackson, although he was mostly black by appearance, was obviously seeking out something that he found attractive in another race. Maybe he had a distant white ancestor who wanted to be white. So maybe that's what causes race mixing. Maybe it's mixed raceness in the first place that causes it. So how would you get a mixed race in the first place that didn't rely on people being consensual, people wanting to race mix? Presumably via the abuse of slaves, um, or rape in war, something like that. Not by pleasant means, by definition, because you'd have two different peoples who would, by nature, prefer to be what they are, the way cats prefer to be cats and dogs prefer to be dogs. Alternatively, it's just natural for some people to want to breed outside of their community. In nature, you do find sometimes some outcrossing between species. You do find that with different groups interbreeding. That can be found. So I suppose that's possible. But I think that it would just be fairer to people's offspring if they selected their children's genes on the basis of whether or not they were going to be happy. For example, if people wanted to race mix, say a white person and a black person, they could have embryos tested for racial feelings and choose ones that are unlikely to or not likely, because they haven't any right to choose something that's to have. I don't think they should. I don't know. I don't think it's right to produce an unhappy offspring just so you can play at being parents. But so they could try and prevent the birth of someone like Michael Jackson, who would and thereby prevent someone from being very unhappy with themselves, because you can't escape from yourself. You know, if you're unhappy with yourself, then you have a problem you can't get away from. You know, and if it's too much for you to handle, then you can end up like Michael Jackson, having plastic surgery even or something to try to change who you are, and never really succeeding in being what you want to be because you're just not that thing. You know, so I think it would just be considerate of people, because we have the technology these days. You know, I think it would be considerate of people to choose embryos on the basis of whether or not they had racist genes. Because if they had racist genes, it wouldn't be fair that they were born to a mixed race couple. You know, I mean, black people still call themselves black even if they're not very dark. So it probably wouldn't matter so much if the racist genes were black racist genes. Um, but for white people, it might make a difference. If you had white racist genes in a black body, that would be very cruel, really, because it could cause a lot of people, a lot of problems. It would cause someone like Michael Jackson, who wanted to be white and had a white identity. That must have come from somewhere. It wouldn't have come from nowhere. I bet you if he was genetically tested, he could be found to have white racist genes. Except we don't even accept there is a white race these days, do we? Black people and leftists and so on and globalists have decided there's no such thing as the white race. And so obviously there can't be white racist genes. And also you're not allowed to even discuss race anymore. It's supposed to be colorblind. But you know what I mean anyway, really. There may well be white racist genes. And I just think if there are, they should not be in a black body, because they would be unhappy. They could well be unhappy anyway. You might teach them to find it okay, but that's not the same thing as it being naturally okay to them. And people have a right to their own natures, haven't they? I think they have. I would think that parents should want their own children to be able to live according to their natures. I mean, at least unless their natures are that of a serial killer or a rapist or something like that. You know, as long as a person is a good person, you want them to be able to live according to their nature and not be brainwashed just so you can kid yourself that you're making the world a better place, or raising your children right when you haven't even had them humanely, or just so that you can do something that suits you by making them not be racist, just because you're not racist, so yeah, we can see from the example of Michael Jackson how unhappy some people are when they're born into the wrong body. Let's remember as well the example of transvestites. I mean, transsexuals. They will even go as far as having operations on their sex organs in order to try to be something that their genes are telling them they are. They have genes that are mixed up, and they're telling them that they're women when they were born in a male body, or that they're men when they were born in women's bodies. They do. It's been found they have mixed up genes. So they have identity crises as a result. And I think the same thing may apply to, I mean, you wouldn't call them sexist for wanting to be what they are, naturally. So why not just let people who have racial preferences be what they are? I mean, so what if it's racist? It's their entitlement. Are you going to call a bird a birdist or a cat a catist? Let people be what they are. Don't tell them what to be. And don't think that you can eliminate people on the basis that they don't share your politics, including with regard to interbreeding. It's a personal thing. You can't dictate something like that. So, I mean, and look at the results that there can be as well. So I would say, just as you can check for diseases, you should check for racism genes, and deselect embryos, that at least those that have white genes, in black bodies, because I think it causes a lot of unhappiness. And also, that way, at least you would, yeah, and also you should, you should do something that stops the white population from dwindling away and being carried over into the black population against its will in many cases. And that could be achieved by, as well, by stopping people from, once they're in a black body, from seeking white people because they identify with them. So we should, for that reason too, to avoid genocide and raping millions of people, we should be considerate about creating unhappy people who have white racial identities in black bodies. Yeah, that way we would end up with black people who were racist and preferred being black, or with and gradually possibly create a black population that doesn't prefer white people anymore, so that white people who don't want to live in black bodies can gradually perhaps lose those genes that are happy to race mix, and end up with a population that doesn't outbreed, since that's what they would prefer. Okay, thanks, bye. I suppose it's also possible, though, that race mixing could result from ancestral memories of a common gene pool that some people would be happy to return to as they saw it, although probably both subspecies would have moved on by then genetically. But some people might just be happier to, or maybe have stayed closer to genetically to their ancestral group or whatever, and recognize that in people of other subspecies, and would just find that an acceptable trait to share that they had in common, which for them would make a subgroup anyway. Yeah, of people who still retained a lot of ancestral genes that they enjoyed having in common with people of the other group. But those that had differentiated much might prefer to remain in their own subgroup, their own genetic, their own racial subgroup. For those that would, in real life, black people don't generally mind race mixing so much, and they always think they're black as long as they've got any black in them at all. But for white people, the situation is different. Those that are racist generally prefer to remain white, and even if they're in a mixed race body, they won't be happy to call themselves black. They'll if they've got genes for white identities, even in a black body, they will want to be white. So another way to help white people to not all end up carried over by those who are happy to race mix into black bodies. Another way to help them to remain white would be for them to do psychological tests and genetic tests, try to identify those of themselves who want to be white, and just try to breed just that kind, and deselect embryos that are happy to carry genes over, that are happy to race mix, because that way they will get to have children who will live in white bodies and be happy, rather than gradually be carried over wholesale into admixture groups, that admixture population, which they would not be happy in. So yeah, I think that people should start, or white people anyway, who don't want to race mix, should start deselecting embryos that are happy to race mix. This is not the same as saying that you should deselect people who are happy to race, white people who are happy to race mix, because they exist now in their millions. And I'm not saying that about them. Obviously, they can do what they like, but it would be considerate of them to try and make sure that they didn't have children with white identities and black bodies, because they'd be unhappy. Black identities in mixed race bodies are sometimes also unhappy. There are black people, well, you generally call them black people, mixed race people, who are unhappy with having white admixture. So really, you should really determine who's racist and respect that when you have a child. If you do want to race mix, you should actually select embryos that are going to be happy race mixing. They're going to be happy as mixed race people, because the alternative is that you produce people who are not happy, made just to please you, and you won't make them happy. You won't find them make you happy anyway, because they will say things like, "Oh, mom, oh, dad, why did you do this to me?" So you won't be happy anyway, and you'll just start giving them lectures and things and moralizing at them, and they'll just think that you're very unsympathetic and very selfish, and you don't think about the effects you have on other people when you just do what you want, and you just do what you want. That's what they'll think of you. So unless you successfully brainwash them and make them follow your politics, which would be a nasty thing to do to them, really. It wouldn't respect their own wishes with their own lives. So really, the best thing would be to either have no children if you're going to race mix, or make sure that you are having children which don't have particular racial preferences. That's the only way to do things, really, in a way that won't cause unhappiness to others, which you must admit, really, you don't have a right to do. Really, if you think you have a right to do that, then that's very selfish, really. And selfish people who are even selfish about making their own children unhappy, knowingly, or risking their happiness knowingly, you know, probably aren't fit to be parents anyway. Yeah. So we should all start um, selecting our children on the basis of whether or not they want to admix. Although you might get some racist people who don't mind having children who would race mix, because there might still be white people. They've just got these old genes that hark back to the time when there was one race instead of several. So but people who do want to be sure that all their descendants are happy. Well, if we did want to make sure that our descendants are happy, basically, maybe we should select embryos on the grounds of whether or not they fit our political, in terms of racial, for example, or in terms of racial politics, because that way we would all be happy. People who are happy to admix could go ahead and do so, and people who wanted to be black could be black, and people who wanted to be white could be white. That's probably the best way of doing things, really. It would make sure that every group of people was happy. Thanks for watching. Bye.